Okay, hi friends. Today we are going to talk about how often in English. In order to signify how often, we use certain words in the sentences. Here are some of the words that the English people use. They are always, often, usually or normally means the same thing, sometimes, rarely or seldom. Then there's a phrase hardly ever, and of course never. Today we're going to decide when to use each one of these so that it fits just right in our sentence. There's actually a scale that helps us understand how often we do certain things. I'm going to give you certain examples. Let's say, I'm going to put this aside so you can see. How often? If I want to say that I do something always, I am very certain about that. For example, I always sleep at night. Always sleep at night. And that means that I do it every night. Every 24-hour period, I go to sleep for at least some time. So it's 100% certainty. If I want to say that I do something often, then it's not all the time, but it's an 80% certainty. For example, I often sleep in hotels because I travel for work. I often sleep in hotels because I travel for work. Then the word usually or normally means a little bit less certainty than often. I would say it in a sentence like, usually I go to bed at 10 o'clock. Usually I go to bed at 10. That means that I can go to bed at 10:20, or sometimes I go to bed at 9, but usually it's 10 o'clock. So it's a 70% certainty. Let's move on to sometimes. Sometimes is a tricky word because sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. So it's only 50%. Coming back to our example with sleep, sometimes I go to bed without dinner because I get home so late from work, for example. So sometimes I go to bed without dinner. Okay? Because I get so late from work. So I like to eat my dinner, so I do eat dinner most of the times, but sometimes I don't and I have to go to bed without eating. The next word is rarely. Rarely is also used as seldom. Those are synonyms, and that means only 30% certainty. I seldom sleep well if I have a drink. Or I rarely sleep well. I rarely sleep well if I have had a drink or two. So sometimes there's a chance that I will sleep well, but there's a 30% chance that I will not. So the next word, or a combination of words, or phrasal verb, is hardly ever. A phrase, hardly ever. Hardly ever means that I almost never do it, but there is a certain 10% chance that that can also happen. So I hardly ever go to bed later than 12 o'clock at night. I hardly ever ever go to bed after 12. After 12. That means that most of the times I go to bed before 12. Actually, usually I go to bed at 10. But I hardly ever, there's a 10% chance that I still go to bed after 12. And our next one is, let's say, 100% certainty of absence, or 0% is when we say never. I would say, in my example, I can never sleep if I'm too cold. I can never sleep if I am too cold. So if I am too cold, there's 0% that I'm falling asleep. So those are your examples, and that is how you know which word to use at a certain time if you need to say how often. Thank you, and hope to see you next with our new tips and tricks on the English language. Bye!